Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my channel? Thank you so much. She was left wounded with her twin newborns until a Comanche warrior called her his own. "Do not leave me," Eliza screamed, her voice cracking against the cold night air. One hand clutched her swollen belly, the other reaching desperately for the wagon as it thundered away down the dirt trail, wheels spraying slush and mud. "You're just trouble, Eliza. Who the hell gets pregnant in the middle of a heist?" The leader of the outlaw gang spat, laughing harshly as he cracked the reins. "Die here or die later," he added, concerned. The wagon disappeared between the black silhouettes of the pine trees, leaving only a streak of lantern light fading into the falling dusk. Eliza collapsed, her knees hitting the frozen earth, breath shallow and quick. Snow flurried weakly from the sky, mixing with her sweat, her tears, and the spreading warmth of blood. Her body seized, contractions like knives. She cried out, half curse, half prayer, her back arching. The forest offered no answer. She pulled herself behind a hollow log, every inch a war against pain. Her hands tore at her skirts, teeth gritted against the scream rising in her throat. Darkness pressed in from all sides, but her will burned brighter. The first baby came just after midnight, the second minutes later, tiny, slick with blood, alive. She wrapped them in torn flannel from her coat, cradled them close to her bare chest, and rocked, whispering through cracked lips, "You do not die. Mama swore you live." Her voice faded, her eyes fluttered. The wind picked up, rattling the trees like bones. The babies whimpered. Further back in the shadows, a figure watched, Tanga, son of the Comanche war chief, crouched between two cedars, moccasins rooted in the snow. His bow lay still across his lap, his knife glinting at his hip. He had tracked the outlaw wagon through this pass, not for the woman, but to mark the men who had slaughtered a merchant's camp near their water. He had not expected this, a white woman alone, birthing on Comanche land. He should have turned away. He had once vowed he would never again lift a hand for the invaders, not after what they did to his mother, not after his little brother's cries were drowned by flames. He rose slowly, eyes cold, but then the soft, broken sound of infant crying made him freeze. It clawed at his spine, not like the battle cries of men or the wails of mourning. This sound was pure, unknowingly alive. He clenched his jaw and turned away. The crying grew sharper. One of the babies had rolled slightly in Eliza's weak arms, face blue-tinged, lips searching. A wind snapped through the clearing, kicking snow into their small, shivering bodies. Tanga cursed under his breath. He spun his horse around and dug in his heels. Moments later, he dismounted beside her. Eliza flinched, barely able to raise her head. "Please, please," she whispered, her voice no louder than the wind. He knelt, examining the babies. The first boy was barely breathing, their skin so pale, like new bark. Then her feverish but steady pulse. He took a breath. "Not for you," he said low in his own tongue, "for the ones who cannot yet learn hatred." He reached into his saddlebag, pulled out a water skin and a hide blanket. He wrapped the infants first, then lifted Eliza like she weighed nothing at all. She whimpered but did not resist. Snow crunched beneath his boots as he carried them toward the ridge, his face set like stone. The moon climbed high above the trees, silver and wide, watching the Comanche warrior vanish into the dark with the woman no one wanted and two lives who had not yet chosen sides. The scent of smoke and warm hide filled Eliza's nostrils as her eyes blinked open. For a moment, she did not move. Her body throbbed with exhaustion, but the warmth around her confused her. She was not dead, she was not in the woods anymore. Above her, the ceiling rippled softly, made of sewn-together animal hide stretched tight over a rounded frame. The light that crept through the seams was the weak kind that came just before dawn. Wind pressed against the outside world, but inside it was still, quiet, and warmer than it had any right to be. Beneath her lay a mat padded with deer hide and woven reeds, soft and sturdy. Her head turned slowly, pain screamed through her ribs, but she bore it. There they were, her boys, her two tiny sons, barely a day old, curled against her side, wrapped in something softer than she'd ever known, a blanket of buffalo fur and fox pelt stitched into a cradle. Their cheeks were flushed with life, their breath steady. They looked like nothing had ever hurt them. She started to cry quietly, from relief, from confusion, from the weight of being alive when every part of her had expected otherwise. A shadow stirred by the flap of the lodge. Eliza tensed, arms curling tighter around the boys, but it was not a shadow of menace. It was age and stillness that entered, the old woman. Braids long and silver-threaded fell to her waist. Her face was carved by sun and sorrow. She said nothing as she crossed the lodge and placed a small bowl near Eliza's side, along with a spoon carved from bone. Steam lifted from the thick mixture inside, corn, maybe herbs, a porridge simple, nourishing, warm. Eliza's dry throat rasped. "Where am I?" she whispered. "Where are we?" The old woman didn't reply, she simply gave a small nod, not of reassurance but recognition, and stepped back outside without a sound. Alone again, Eliza held her sons to her chest. She breathed them in, trying not to shake. She knew where she was now, a Comanche camp. She'd heard the stories, even feared them as a child, but this place didn't match the tales. "I'm a burden," she murmured. "They'll kill me. I'm not supposed to be here." The porridge went untouched. When the flap stirred again, she jerked upright, ignoring the pain in her side. Her instincts roared awake. It was the warrior, the one who had appeared in the trees before she passed out. He was tall, shoulders broad, and his presence filled the space like the under before a storm. His face was unreadable, skin like polished bronze, a scar across his jaw, bow slung across his back. But his hands were empty. No, he carried something, a rabbit, cleaned, skinned, ready for fire. He didn't speak at first, just approached the edge of the fire circle and placed the rabbit beside the bowl. Eliza flinched, her voice sharp. "Do not come closer. I won't let anyone touch them." His eyes flicked to hers, not cruel, not kind, just watching, weighing. Then he spoke, voice low and steady, thick with accent but clear. "Eat, then feed them." That was all, just that. He turned to go, but as he did, she caught the movement of his hand over the rabbit's fur, saw the deep lines in his skin, the calluses, the scars, not from war but from work, firewood, rope, leather. The hands of a man who labored. He disappeared through the flap. For a long time, she sat there unmoving. Then, quietly to the empty space he'd left behind, she whispered, "Who are you?" No answer came, only the trees beyond the lodge whispering in a language older than either of them. Morning light slid through the cracks of the hide tent, casting slivers of gold over Eliza's sleeping sons. The camp around her was slowly waking, filled with low voices, fire crackles, and the hiss of boiling water over coals. For once, Eliza did not feel like prey waiting to be devoured. She sat upright, holding both boys against her chest, listening outside. A group of elders sat in a circle. One of the older women, her face lined like a river map, glanced at the tent and gave a small nod. A boy no older than 10 ran inside moments later, his moccasins soft against the earth. He pointed to each child in turn and announced, "Now we swano." Eliza blinked. "What?" The boy grinned. "Light," he said, gesturing to the baby with lighter eyes than the other. "Thin wind." She did not understand why her throat tightened, but it did. She managed a soft thank you. Later, as the morning grew, Eliza found herself outside for the first time since waking in this strange place. Her legs were weak, but she carried her sons in a sling made from softened hide tied across her chest. The air smelled of smoke and winter herbs. Children ran past her laughing. No one stopped her, but few made eye contact. She felt them watching, eyes from tents behind, shoulders over shoulders. Still, the names stuck in her mind, Nawi and Swano. It was the first time anyone had named something that belonged to her since her husband died. The first time it felt like she was not simply surviving but being allowed to exist. Then came the voice, sharp and bitter. You should not be here. Eliza turned. A young woman stood across the clearing, arms folded, dark eyes burning like coals. Her braids swung forward as she took a step. You're a ghost lover, a walker of lies. You carry their blood in our land. Eliza stiffened. I didn't ask to be here. But you came, like they always do. The woman reached into a small pouch and pulled something gray and crumbling, ash. Go before. Scatter your breath to the wind, Tanga. The voice cracked across the camp like a branch splitting. Tanga stepped into view, his shadow falling long beside the fire pit. His jaw was tight, his eyes darker than Eliza had ever seen them. He raised his hand. No one harms the mother of the ones I brought back. Silence rippled through the camp like thunder without lightning. Tikani's face twisted. She looked at Eliza one last time, then turned and stormed away, ash spilling from her clenched fist. Eliza stood frozen, her sons whimpered at her chest. She waited until the murmurs faded, until the air felt breathable again, then she walked forward, stopping near Tanga. Why did you say that? She asked, her voice shaking. Tanga's eyes stayed on the horizon. I did not say it for you. Eliza swallowed hard. Then why for them, he said, nodding to the boys. I will not let them be hated for what they cannot change. But you could have left me there, she whispered. Let me die. He looked at her, then really looked. I did once, he said. Once I walked away from someone crying for help. I never forgot her face. I will not do it again. Eliza said nothing. Her lips parted, but no words came. Only the wind answered, cold and clean across her skin. In that moment, something deep inside her shifted. Not love, not yet, but a fragile thread of understanding that tangled between them and the two tiny lives asleep against her chest. Eliza's fingers trembled as she tried to mimic the shape of the word Tanga had just taught her. No, she said, her voice tentative. Tanga nodded once, his eyes soft. Fire. She smiled faintly and repeated it stronger this time. Noko. In return, he fumbled with a cloth diaper in his hand, one of the twins squirming with protest in the shallow cradle. His brow furrowed, and Eliza reached over, guiding his hands, showing how to fold the edge beneath. Not too tight, she murmured, her voice gentler than she realized. Their eyes met for a fleeting second. No one spoke of gratitude, but it hung between them like smoke from the morning fire. That winter evening, they stacked firewood side by side near the tent. He placed his bundle down first, and she laid hers beside it, their fingers brushing briefly. It was not a declaration of anything, but in the cold silence, it meant they had started to share warmth without needing words or permission. Then came the hoofbeats, distant at first, thudding across frozen earth like war drums. The camp stilled. Warriors reached for weapons, elders pulled children into tents. Eliza stood, eyes wide, clutching the boys to her chest. Tanga emerged from the edge of the woods, bow already strung. He caught her gaze, then shifted toward the ridge where the riders appeared, 5 of them, pale-skinned, rifles slung across their backs. Travelers, one warrior muttered, but Eliza knew. Her knees buckled. They were from the gang, the same group who left her behind. Only now, they were not here to steal, they were here to silence the lead man. A face half covered in beard and frost dismounted and held up a hand. We heard you took in a woman, blonde, 2 infants. We're looking to take her back. Make sure she don't talk. His grin was cruel. Tanga's stance shifted. No one here like that, I think. We'll have a look around anyway, but Tanga raised his hand higher. You look, you die. The man laughed, but it was thin. That night, the tribe kept their fires dim. Rain began to fall, light at first, then heavier, turning the dirt to mud. Tanga took Eliza and the babies beyond the cliffs into a narrow crevice just wide enough to hide them. He lit no torch, he spoke no loud words. Inside the cave, the air was cold and damp. Eliza shivered, cradling her sons as they whimpered softly. Water trickled down the stone walls. Tanga sat just outside the entrance, soaked through, bow across his lap. He did not sleep, he only watched. When the storm rose and the wind howled like wolves, he slipped inside briefly and took off his outer coat, laying it gently over her shoulders. "You will freeze," she said, her voice trembling. He shook his head, then finally he spoke low and steady. "I swore once, after the fire, after the blood, I swore I would never again save a white life, never again open my hand to a mouth that would curse it." He looked at her, "But I broke that vow." Eliza's eyes burned with unshed tears. "Why?" "Because you are not like them." The wind moaned through the stones. "You bled for them," he said, "but you stayed breathing for them too. That matters." She did not answer, could not. But when he turned back toward the cave entrance, sitting guard through the night rain, she did not sleep either. She watched him, every breath, every motion, because sometimes the ones who say nothing are the ones who protect everything. The night of the fire festival arrived with the hush of first spring. Smoke curled above the trees and blue ribbons. Sparks rose into a black sky, stars flickering like eyes too ancient to blink. The whole Comanche camp had gathered near the central clearing where the great fire was being fed by cedar wood and bark soaked in fragrant oil. It was a sacred tradition, welcoming the season of life, of planting, of new oaths made and old ones broken. For the young, it was something more. Each warrior carved a small token from wood, a simple-shaped bird, branch, sun, star. It was then offered to the person they wished to court, dropped silently in their lap during the dance of fire. If accepted, it meant the beginning of something new; if returned, the carving would be burned. Eliza stood near the edge of the circle, her twins asleep in a woven sling across her chest. She wore a dress sewn by the older women of the tribe, her pale hair braided and tied with a single feather. She had not planned to attend, but the elder woman who fed her daily had taken her hand and led her there without a word. Now the music of flutes and drums carried like breath through the warm air. Girls laughed in corners, boys pretended not to look. Sparks danced higher and higher into the night, and Tangwa stood alone, arms folded near the flames. Then silence. The drums stilled, the flutes quieted, and the tribal chief, a tall man with silver in his braid and eyes like carved stone, stepped forward. He looked at Tangwa. "My son," he said in a calm but firm Comanche voice, "the camp speaks. Some wonder why you brought her, why you broke your vow, why you risked war for a woman who is not of our blood." All eyes turned. Eliza held her breath. Tangwa stepped forward. The fire lit his face in gold and shadow. His voice, when it came, did not tremble. "I did not bring her here," he said. "I brought home my family." The words dropped like stones into still water, gasps, sharp exhales. The old chief narrowed his eyes. Tangwa did not flinch. "I do not speak of blood, I speak of what is born in fire. She did not ask to be here, she survived to protect. She bled for her children. She learned our words. She did not beg, she became." He turned then faced the woman in the feathered braid. "I broke a vow," he said, "but I found something worth breaking it for." The old chief was silent. Then he stepped back, and the drums resumed. Eliza stood frozen, her heart pounding so loudly she thought the babies might wake. No one had ever claimed her like that, not her dead husband, not her family. No one had ever called her home. Her fingers clenched the sling across her chest. The fire glowed brighter. Tangwa had turned away as if it were done, as if it meant little, but to her it meant everything. She stepped forward, she said nothing. Words would have failed her, but she placed her hand over her heart, then over his, and in that gesture, the tribe saw her answer. The elder woman nodded. A girl passed by and placed a carved hawk in Eliza's palm. He made it, she whispered. Eliza traced the edges of the wooden figure with shaking fingers. It was rough in places, like the man who carved it, but strong like him. She did not drop it, she did not return it. She held it close. Later that night, as the flames crackled and young couples disappeared toward the trees, Eliza sat beside the sleeping twins, the hawk figure tucked near her chest. Tangwa walked by and paused. She looked up. "You meant it?" she asked softly. "Family?" He nodded once. "Even me?" He did not answer with words, he simply knelt beside her and reached for one of the boys, cradling him like he had done it his whole life. Eliza watched him, and for the first time in months, she felt something steady inside her chest, not just safety, belonging, and it burned warmer than the fire outside. The rain came without warning, hard and cold, soaking the land like it was trying to drown the very roots beneath it. The Comanche camp retreated into hides and huts. Fire pits hissed, and the wind carried a chill that knifed through even the thickest furs. Inside their lodge, Eliza pressed the back of her hand to Noi's burning forehead. He whimpered, twisting in his sleep, skin hot as coals. Swano lay nearby, whimpering in sympathy, sensing his brother's pain, though he was not fevered. "Please," she whispered, rocking Noi gently. "Please stay with me." He coughed a small dry rasp that sounded far too old for a baby not even a season born. The elder women brought herbs wrapped in leather and cloth, but none of it helped. The fever only climbed. That night, Eliza refused to sleep. She held her son to her chest, humming broken lullabies into his damp hair, heart thudding in fear. Tanga entered the tent quietly, soaked from the rain, kneeling beside her without a word. He saw the child's color, red blotches blooming across pale cheeks, eyes glazed. "Eliza," he said low, "this is not a common fever." She looked up, eyes red. "He is dying, isn't he?" Tanga did not answer. Instead, he pulled a satchel tight against his chest, preparing to leave again. "Where are you going?" she asked, voice cracking. "There is another tribe 2 days from here. Their healer knows a route that lowers the heat," but he hesitated. "They do not like us." Eliza grabbed his wrist. "Do not go alone. They will kill you." He pulled her fingers free with care. "I have to try." Then he was gone, through the rain into the dark. The next 2 nights were endless. Nahi's breathing became thin, his cries weaker. Eliza stopped eating, her hands trembled constantly. At one point, she knelt in the rain outside the lodge, sobbing as the storm drowned out her pleas. "Take me," she begged the night sky, "take me if it means he lives." At dawn, just as the sun burned red through the clouds, a shout came from the ridge. Tanga, on a horse, stumbled, foaming, exhausted. Tanga slid from the saddle, blood on his arm, one side of his shirt torn. Eliza ran. He staggered, thrusting a pouch into her hands. "Boil this fast." Inside were twisted, pungent roots, dark and sharp with scent. Eliza rushed back, throwing the roots into the boiling pot, feeding Nui sips with a carved spoon. Hours passed, then a full day. She did not sleep. Then at last, Nui's fever broke. His body cooled, he slept deep and still. Eliza wept silently, forehead against his. Later, she found Tanga sitting outside, wrapping a makeshift bandage around his upper arm. The gash was long but shallow, likely from a blade. She sat beside him, pulling the strip of hide from his hand. "Let me." He did not protest. She worked carefully, fingers precise. When she finished, she sat back and looked him in the eye. "If you had not come back," she whispered, "I would not have forgiven you." Tanga said nothing. She added, quieter still, "But you did, and I do not know how to thank you for my son's life." "You already did," he said, his voice gravel low. "When you called him ours." Eliza blinked, then her hand slipped into his, no hesitation this time. The storm had passed, but her heart still echoed with thunder. Only this time, it was the sound of something beginning, not ending. It was nearly spring when the riders came. The snow had melted, the rivers ran high, and the land smelled of thawed soil. The Comanche camp stood quiet beneath the sky, the color of flint. Smoke curled from the cooking fires, and children played in the dust without fear. Eliza was outside, swaying with one baby on her hip while the other napped. When the sentry called out, "Riders." 3 of them. Slow, cautious hands visible. They were white men, rough-looking but not hostile, and each bore makeshift bandages. One limped badly, another clutched his side. Their horses were lean, their eyes full of desperation. Immediately, warriors stepped forward, spears angled low, bows strung tight. Tangwa arrived at a run. "Stop," Eliza said, stepping between them. "They are wounded." "They are invaders," someone snapped. Eliza raised her hand. "Let me speak." Tangwa narrowed his eyes but gave her a slight nod. She turned to the men. "Why are you here?" she asked. The oldest rider, barely staying upright, tipped his hat with shaking fingers. "We mean no harm, ma'am. We were ambushed by bandits 2 days south. Lost 2 men, no food, no medicine. We heard whispers that Comanche have healers. We took a chance." Eliza studied them. Their wounds were real, and their eyes, tired and hollow, were not those of men looking to steal or conquer, just survive. She turned to Tangwa. "Let them rest. Let us treat their wounds. It would mean more than saving just them." Tangwa looked past her at the small children playing in the grass, at the mothers cooking, at the quiet that had taken them years to protect. Then he nodded once. The warriors parted. Eliza brought water, the elders brought salve, and the strangers wept with gratitude. Later that evening, as the fire cracked low and the sick slept in borrowed hides, Takani approached Eliza. Her eyes were watchful, unreadable. In her arms, she cradled Swano. "You trust them?" Takani said softly, not accusing, just curious. "I trust what I see," Eliza replied, "not what others tell me to hate." Takani looked down at the baby in her arms. His little hand grasped her necklace, gurgling slowly. Her lips parted in a smile, small but real. "He is not afraid," Tani murmured. "Because no one is born with hate," Eliza said. "Someone has to teach it." Tani shifted the child, pressed her cheek to his head. "Then maybe it can be untaught." Across the fire, Tangwa watched, arms crossed, face unreadable. Later, he stood at the edge of camp where stars blanketed the sky. Eliza joined him, wrapping a shawl tighter around her shoulders. "You let them in," she said. "I know what that cost you." He did not speak for a long while. "I thought protecting meant keeping everything out," he said. Now, Tangwa turned to her, his eyes softer than she had ever seen. "Now I wonder if it means letting some things in." He touched her arm gently, fingers grazing her skin like a question. Eliza leaned into the touch. In the distance, a child's laugh echoed, a fire popped. "I used to believe I could only run," she said, "from danger, from loss, from the world. And now I think I found something worth staying for." The wind shifted. Tanga took her hand for the first time. Without hesitation, he had lived through fire, she had survived abandonment. But standing there with the night pressing soft around them, both knew this was not a story of escape anymore. It was the beginning of something they no longer had to run from. The grass was high and golden, swaying in a hush that only early summer could bring. The land had shed its frost, and wildflowers dotted the plains like freckles after a long sleep. In the meadow just beyond the camp, beneath the open sky, Eliza stood with a child in each arm, Swano asleep against her chest, Noi chewing the edge of her shawl, wide-eyed and calm. The breeze carried the scent of woods and sweet grass, and the world felt, for the first time in a long time, quiet. Tanga was finishing the new shelter. It was not a grand home, but something solid, bone-framed with buffalo hide walls, cedar posts shaped by hand, and a smooth earthen floor. His hands, hardened by years of war and labor, moved slowly as he laid the final stones around the fire pit. There was a reverence in the way he worked, as if he were building more than shelter, as if he were shaping the future one piece at a time. There had been no feast, no drums, no ceremonial words, just a shared understanding, a decision born not of pressure but of peace. Eliza laid the boys down on a woven mat inside. The light filtered through the seams of hide, bathing them in a golden hush. She stood at the doorway for a moment, watching them breathe, then stepped out into the tall grass where Tanga stood, brushing the dust from his hands. "You finished?" she said softly. "For now," he replied, his voice steady, his gaze quiet. She looked down at his hands, rough, scarred, steady, then back into his eyes. "Do you ever think," she asked, "that this, all of this, wasn't supposed to happen?" He shrugged gently. "Maybe not supposed to, but needed." She smiled faintly. "That's not very romantic." Tanga turned slightly toward her, the corner of his mouth lifting just barely. "I am not a romantic man." "No," she said, stepping closer. "You're better." Without another word, she reached for his hand, and he took it. They stood there in the middle of the field where no priest would ever come, where no paper would be signed. No one watched, no one needed to. This moment was theirs, and that was enough. In the hush of the evening, Eliza leaned into his chest, his arms wrapping around her as the sun dipped behind the hills. Her eyes closed, and her voice was little more than breath. "This is it," she whispered. "This is enough," he replied, resting his forehead gently against hers. Later, when the children stirred and whimpered in their sleep, Eliza rocked them by the fire, and Tanga sharpened arrows under the open sky. The stars began to blink awake, and coyotes howled far beyond the horizon. Another night like many before, and yet different because something had shifted, not in the land, but in them. They did not talk about love the way storybooks. There were no flowers, no declarations, but there were the things that mattered more, a bowl of stew shared when food was short, a hand brushing hers as they passed in the doorway, the way he never let her carry more than she had to. As the fire burned low and the camp quieted, Eliza sat beside Tangwa, their blanket draped over both shoulders. She looked up at the stars. "I used to think survival meant fighting," she said. "Winning, proving something to the world. And now I know survival is quieter. It's in the choices, not where you start, but where you decide to stay." She turned to him, her voice barely louder than the wind. "I did not choose where I was born or who hurt me, but I choose this. I choose this land, this tent, these babies, and I choose you." Tangwa watched her, something deep flickering in his eyes. His thumb brushed the edge of her hand. "And I choose you," he said simply. "Not for a day, not because I must, but because you are the place my soul rests." She leaned her head on his shoulder, and he kissed the crown of her hair. Together, they watched the fire fade to embers. Above them, the night deepened. Around them, the grass whispered. And somewhere between one breath and the next, without ceremony or name, they became a family, not born from blood or tribe, but from choice. And that choice was enough. If this story stirred something deep in you, if you felt the quiet weight of love built not on words but on survival, sacrifice, and choice, then you belong here with us at Wild West Love Stories. We tell more than tales, we share truths that echo across canyons, over battle-scarred hearts, and through the kind of silence where real devotion grows. If you believe love can bloom even in the harshest soil, then ride with us. Subscribe to Wild West Love Stories and never miss a tale where bullets miss, but hearts never do. Your next story may be the one that stays with you forever.